Azerbaijan claims its troops have taken more than 60 positions of the Armenian forces in the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. According to Armenian-backed separatists there, at least 25 people have been killed and dozens wounded in attacks by Azerbaijan's military. Prosecutors in Azerbaijan say one civilian has been killed in the city of Shushi. Baku is calling its offensive an anti-terrorist operation, which it says was launched after 2 soldiers and 4 civilians were killed in landmine explosions. It's demanding separatist forces lay down their arms and the Armenian leadership in Nagorno-Karabakh resign. Well, Nagorno-Karabakh is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but almost all of its residents are ethnic Armenians. Azerbaijan took control of parts of the region after a 44-day war against Armenia in 2020. For more, I'm now joined by Marcel Rötig, director at the Friedrich Ebert Foundation's Regional Office for Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. He joins us from the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. Welcome to DW. Now, tensions had been rising for some time. This military operation hardly comes as a surprise, but what do you make of the timing of it?
Yeah, you're right. It didn't come as a surprise since we saw the troop buildup in the recent weeks, if not months, ongoing. So we were kind of fearing or expected that something of that kind could happen any moment. However, I'm particularly surprised that it's happening during the United Nations meeting while everybody is focused on Ukraine, while the whole world is gathering in New York. Having that here in the Caucasus is a way of a strange sign that it's happening exactly right now. That is one thing. And another thing, I think there was an agreement probably between Azerbaijan, Russia, and Turkey to launch the specific operation right now.
Russia and Turkey have been very actively mediating between the two parties of the conflict. And the Turkish president at the UN General Assembly today said that Turkey supports the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. That comes just days after he proposed 4-way talks, including precisely Russia and Armenia and Azerbaijan. So could you explain what role Turkey plays in all of this? And now that you say that they knew that this was coming?
Yeah. Turkey is the closest ally of Azerbaijan in the region traditionally. Turkey has its interest in the Caucasus, of course. First and foremost, if we think about the economic dimension, well, Turkey has an interest to get a direct land road onto the Caspian Sea. That's one of the aspects, of course. And the other thing is that Turkey as itself, given the economic situation is in Turkey, needs Azerbaijan as a partner when it comes to energy and financial transactions. So there's a close interconnection in between them. On the other side, Turkey sees a role as a mediator or as giving the Russian weakness in the Caucasus. And I think what we see actually is the outcome of Russia's weakness since the invasion of Ukraine. And Turkey sees its role as the new big player in the Caucasus, as the one who's shaping the Caucasus and the future relation here in the Caucasus. And Azerbaijan feels the backing, and that's why they became much more adventurous than they have been in the years before.
Mm-hmm. Before we look at how Turkey could possibly play a role in bringing peace, I want to know if you think that this is the beginning of a new war. How serious is the situation right now?
The situation is definitely serious, but so far everything is ongoing around Nagorno-Karabakh. So we are on Azerbaijani territory right now. We have no reports about shelling or fighting in between Armenia and Azerbaijan along the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. And the hope is that it's going to stay with Karabakh, because if we talk about another full-scale war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, then we have to talk about other regional players such as Turkey, but not only. We have then to talk in particular about Iran and Iran's interest in the south of Armenia, where they have a direct land border. That's actually the only land access Iran has towards the Russian market, given Armenia's membership in the Eurasian Economic Union. So that's what we have to look at. My feeling so far is that it's about Karabakh purely, and so far the Armenian government, Prime Minister Pashinyan, although being under heavy public pressure, We see protests, maybe even violence tonight on the streets of Yerevan. However, Pashinyan announced that they gave a strict order that the Armenian military forces will not respond to any provocation from the Azerbaijani side. So they keep quiet as for the moment as much as they can, and so far that is a good sign.
We'll have to wrap it up in a second, but I quickly want to know what you think could de-escalate the situation to keep it from spiraling out of control.
The good news is that in the last months, everybody was talking to each other. So we have an ongoing negotiation process. We have the mediation efforts by the European Union. We have the mediation efforts also by Russia, and that is a good sign. Moreover, we have other players, Turkey and Iran, who, in my perception, are not interested in a big escalation in the region. So they are more interested in keeping the status quo. And of course, Western leaders are becoming more vocal, including the possibility of sanctions towards Azerbaijan if we come to an ethnic cleansing or if we come to a direct violation of territorial integrity of Armenia.
That was Marcel Rötig, director at the Friedrich Ebert Foundation's regional office in Georgia. Thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you.
Richard Giragosian, an American Armenian academic and political analyst who is in New York City right now, joins us. He's the director of the Armenian-based independent think tank Regional Studies Center. Mr. Giragosian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Azerbaijan says it's broken through Armenian defensive lines. What do you understand the situation to be right now?
Well, unfortunately, we saw an egregious reliance on force of arms over diplomacy by Azerbaijan. What's most important, however, is understanding this latest offensive by Azerbaijan is neither new nor particularly surprising. It's only the latest in an escalation. And in this context, it comes in the backdrop of a pre-existing humanitarian catastrophe where the Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh was under siege since last December. But grave concerns remain over the potential further loss of life among the civilian population there.
Yeah, I want to get to all the points that you just raised, because you say it doesn't come as a surprise. Tensions had been rising for quite some time. What do you make of the timing of it, though?
Well, I think the timing was a miscalculation by Azerbaijan, because we do have the UN General Assembly meeting, and we do have international focus on Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh, as demonstrated by the recent deployment of EU monitors to Armenia and U.S. facilitation of diplomatic talks, supported by Brussels as well. So I think it's a miscalculation that could lead to further diplomatic isolation of Azerbaijan.
A miscalculation? So why? And what exactly is Baku hoping to achieve here?
Well, on the one hand, to forecast what Azerbaijan seeks, I think it's pretty clear. They're seeking to drive out the Armenian population from Nagorno-Karabakh, creating an environment of uncertainty and insecurity. And the timing is also about a closing window of opportunity. Russia remains overwhelmed and distracted by its failed invasion of Ukraine. Russia has surrendered or lost the diplomatic initiative. And I also think Azerbaijan feels emboldened by recent shipments of military equipment from Israel, as well as Turkish military support. But it's dangerous in terms of risking the lives of 120,000 Armenians who pose no threat to anyone.
Yeah, I want to get a little deeper into the humanitarian situation, because it has been deteriorating over the past months during this Azeri blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh, where no food, no medicine could get through. Azerbaijan was even accused of genocide, of ethnic cleansing. How do you expect the situation for civilians there to evolve now?
Well, it's only getting worse. It's shortages of food, critical medicine, but also dangerously shortages of gasoline. No longer is Nagorno-Karabakh able to turn to ambulance or fire response services. And this is also a public health emergency without trash collection. So the daily lives of Armenians are both under threat, but also uncertain. This is Azerbaijan's ultimate plan, to promote and provoke more of a voluntary exodus. And I do think this is the danger. And coupled with the threat of force over diplomacy, the outlook for tomorrow looks bleak.
Yeah. Russia has historically been a mediator between the two parties of this conflict. But as you already said, they're now very much preoccupied with the war they unleashed on Ukraine. How has that changed Russia's role in the Caucasus and this conflict in particular?
Well, it's changed everything, both geopolitically, but also in terms of military security. Russia has deployed 2,000 peacekeepers to Nagorno-Karabakh who are both weak, but also willing to stand by and watch. In other words, they are failing to fulfill basic expectations of the terms of the ceasefire, as well as to secure access in and out of Nagorno-Karabakh, which depends on only one corridor, the Lachin corridor.
Why is that, though? Why send peacekeepers in the first place if they're not going to be able or willing to keep the peace?
Well, I would say the war of 2020 ended with a Russian-imposed ceasefire agreement and a Russian deployment of peacekeepers where they never had a presence before. But I do think as their military losses and weakness on the Ukrainian battlefield mounted since last year, they are ever more exposed. But there's also a degree of complicity. We have a gas agreement between the European Union and Azerbaijan, which is actually a swap agreement, allowing Azerbaijan to re-export Russian gas. So I do think there's a larger calculation here, and the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh are paying the price for that.
Who has the diplomatic or even maybe military capacity to stop this from spiraling out of control?
Well, the good news is we see a degree of Western resolve that's been missing to date. And the West, in terms of the EU and the United States, are not seeking to mediate. They're seeking to facilitate a diplomatic solution. And increasingly, Azerbaijan is becoming a rogue state in walking away from diplomacy. And there will be a price to pay, whether it's the threat of sanctions or diplomatic isolation. But I do think what really needs to move forward is more of a Western commitment to security. Because after all, it's not just the weaponization of food that was used, but it's now the weapon of fear.
Yeah, that was Richard Garagosian in New York.